Time to check in with our friend Chris Dimakos, our legal corner. We're taking a look at a couple of stories in the news. So, Chris, this one is interesting. So, back when COVID was happening, we coined a term called the Great Resignation, right? Where people were leaving jobs, switching jobs, what we call job jumpers. And data tells us that back then, those people were making 15 to 20% more a year than people who stayed at their job, the job stayers. But that was then, this is now, and now you're suggesting new payroll data shows employees who stay at their jobs and those who jump to another job have almost identical salary increases year over year, which brings up the question, how does this work for your job security? So let's start with that.
Right. And it's so important for people to recognize that when you see, for example, unemployment rates in Canada, so they have gone up. I think we're at 6.6 now. Historically, it's not a good place to be in. You have more employees available. Companies don't have to pay a premium to find someone to staff their job, whereas back in COVID, the pool of employees was much smaller, so they have to pay this much money. Why is it important for you? Well, it's important when you are qualifying your job, when you're saying to yourself, okay, what's out there? I'm not happy where I am now, and you look at alternatives. The one thing you have to look at, apart from salary, and this is where the law comes in, is what your job is worth. I call it equity. How much equity do you have in your job apart from your salary? If they were to get rid of you, if they decided to basically end your employment with the company, in one case, if you're at a new place, you have virtually no equity. If you were at a company for 10 or 15 years, you've built up some equity. And what people often mistake severance for, they look at severance like it's it's a payment due to them, like a penalty or a vacation pay, and it's not. Severance pay, for everyone who's listening, is basically the company saying, we are wrong for letting you go, we are wrong for letting you go, and we are going to give you the amount of money that you need to find another job similar to this one with the same salary and the same attributes. That's what severance is. And if the company is right in letting you go because of performance or you did something like show up drunk to work, well, then they owe you no severance. So when you look at the market, like now with unemployment where it is and how difficult it is to find another job, that's going to push severance up only if your company is not founded in letting you go. Like they don't have good reason to let you go. So it's so important to look at all these things. And I see sometimes someone's like, oh, I can get another job across the street with my competitor for an extra 5% a salary. Make sure you calculate everything that you're leaving on the table. How much equity am I leaving at my current job to go somewhere else? And job security, because that little thing called severance, again, protection if they let go of you when they're not supposed to, that can be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how long you've been there and what your salary is.
So I have a couple of questions. Number one, you're bringing up cause versus without cause, and there's, of course, we have to discuss that. But I guess the other part of that question is, if you signed an agreement when you began that job to what your severance would be when you left, when does that not apply anymore?
So a couple of things you have to remember. When you sign these types of agreements, often these clauses are just annulled. It's very difficult for you to project what the consequence is of you being wrongfully terminated. It's almost like it's something that you can't sign off on a divorce that says, I'm never going to ask for custody of my children again.
Right. Okay,
so
understood.
There are certain things that are not well received in agreements, and one that you can have language about termination. You can have language about compensation. But when you start getting to specifics, it would be easy for an employee to say, yes, but I'm being prejudiced because what's happening in the market today and what happened at my company, how can I have known that when I signed this contract? So there's ways to get around that. I will say, though, very important is that if you do negotiate with a new employer and and somebody wants to hire you from an existing company and you've been there for 10 years, something I always tell people is have them recognize your years of service. That's a big one. So I'm starting a new job, but we're going to write down on this paper that if I get let go tomorrow, it's like you're letting go of an employee with 10 years of service. And that's basically you taking your equity in one job and bringing it over to the other one. And if the company that's hiring you says, absolutely not, we don't want to do that, well, then they might not have had long-term plans for you in the first place.
Okay. You do that before you begin the job?
Yes. So when you're negotiating, usually it could be a professional recruiter who says, hey, I have a job for you with a competitor. They want it. They want you. They're willing to offer you an extra $10,000 a year plus an extra 2 weeks of vacation and all this nice stuff. Yeah, but the problem is I'm leaving 15 years of job security and equity in this job and starting with somebody else. And what if I start with them and 6 months later they've extracted all of my knowledge, all of my client lists, everything, and now they're just going to get rid of me? The way to protect against stuff like that is for them to at least honor, if not all, some of your years of experience by saying, we're hiring you on this date, but as of the first, month or whatever, we are recognizing your years of service with previous employer. And it's a way to basically add job security to your employment contract.
That would then make if you had gone ahead and done that, and let's say you left that new company after however long it was, they would, by virtue of having had that put in your contract, they would have had to pay you that severance?
Right. So what would happen is that when you're trying to qualify what you're doing, you can argue in front of a tribunal like, hey, I wouldn't have left. The only reason I did is because they were honoring my years of service.
I see. Okay.
And that's a way to add additional protections. And not to mention, when you're negotiating a settlement, it helps. Obviously, it's the language is there. So right before we even start talking about getting to the legal proceeding court phase, you already have a leg up on your negotiations.
All right. Good advice today. All right, Chris, thanks so much.
Thanks, Aaron.
Chris Dimakos, our CJAD 800 legal contributor.